deal with a lot of folks who are doing kind of these ultra marathons,
right?
And they'll go from 10 miles a week to like 80 miles a week.
They should probably just run with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things we found with the CrossFit athletes, for example, and the Olympic guys, we're working with the U.S. Olympic weightlifting team. It's whether you're doing cleans or snatch or like any of these overhead lifts,
right?
It's lining up your wrist and your elbow and your shoulder and your lower back and your knees, and all of those get hammered by the same movement over and over and over. And so when you can give someone a way to help reduce the inflammation and heal that tissue faster, it's just a game changer for them. And they can actually go through their strength gain curves faster because they can recover faster.
We are here today with Forrest Smith, co-founder and CEO of Kineon, the amazing red light therapy device that is currently helping my ankle. Forrest, thanks so much for being here.
100%, this is amazing. I can't wait to start sharing some information with you. You just got great vibes already.
Awesome. So you got down here on a city bike. That's what we were talking about that before we started the conversation.
I did, and it reminded me of being in China. I lived in China for almost 20 years, and they have this a lot. The bikes you can rent and just unlock and go bike around the city, and it's a nice kind of throwback feeling to my almost 2 decades in China. It felt great to whiz through New York on this.
I love that. I get around on a bike around the city. I don't take the subway, so I actually have a Vela e-bike, which is like a city bike, but it's my own bike, and I ride everywhere, like everywhere. So talk to me about how you started Kineon, where it all began, and
So really just the concept of trying to make a difference. So instead of trying to build a startup for exit, for kind of a commercial exit and kind of the financial piece of it, I was thinking about starting a new company for being mission-driven. And I was playing rugby with a guy that I was talking to about this, and he said, you know what, you're talking along the same lines, you're saying the same things that my brother's saying, I'd really like to connect you guys. And so he introduced me to his brother, and that's how I met my business partner, Tom. And it was crazy because Tom had left. I was living in China at that point in time, and Tom had left. So I didn't meet my business partner for the first 4 years of working together. But
wow, that's crazy.
It's one of those COVID things. It's just wild. But what we really connected about was, and we were using the same language about it, and we spent our first 2 months really just kind of trying to define that mission in a measurable and accountable way. Because if you're not going to build a company for financial outcomes, then you have to have something to measure. And so what we came down to was defining the mission as improving the quality of life for the largest number of people we can in the most measurable way possible. And that really means that we couldn't make clinical level devices because it's not going to influence enough people. And we really need to focus on reducing friction points so that we can get it out there, price points so we can get it out there,
right.
And then measuring what the impact it had. And with the Move Plus, we've been able to ship over our first 2 years of business 35,000 products, and it's just accelerating. We have these great stories coming in daily about how people are getting out of pain and back into what's possible for their life.
So talk to me a little bit about red light therapy, because I mean, this is an amazing technology that I feel like a lot of people really only get access to at the physical therapist or at a doctor's office, and you've really brought that mainstream into a product that people could buy. So talk to me about the benefits and why red light therapy and all of those things.
Absolutely. I think this is one of the reasons why we chose the technology to start with. Was there was a very big gap between what was available at a clinical level and then what people could use in their homes when we started developing the product. And we got very lucky, actually. There was a new technology from a laser standpoint coming out that was smaller and less expensive than what we had seen in the past from lasers. And it's called vertical cavity surface emission lasers. But essentially what this allowed us to do was to take these massive desktop lasers that you might see in a clinical setting, and then shrink them down into something that's wearable, and making wearable what used to be desktop kind of $30,000 to $50,000 devices. And we had to get it under $500 to be able to get people to adopt it at home, to make it meaningful for them as a potential alternative for pharmaceutical solutions. And it's been great. We've been building a community. We have a huge Facebook community that support each other and providing new protocols and good feedback to people on different ways to use this. But the thing that's been most powerful and kind of motivating for us and our team is really daily we're getting in these amazing testimonials and stories of how people are changing their life with this, how they couldn't sleep for 10 years straight because of the chronic pain they have, and now they can sleep all the way through the night, or they couldn't walk up the stairs, or their wife couldn't walk across the grocery store. And we have a channel that we use within our company to be able to kind of distribute these stories, because that's essentially 100% what we're here for, is helping people make these changes and get out of chronic pain, because it's a debilitating pathology, and there's not really any other good solutions for this.
And so there's a lot of science behind red light therapy as something that helps decrease inflammation, increase healing, bringing blood flow to an area, and all of those things, right? So there's if you go on PubMed or you go on any of these sites, you can find it. It's not woo-woo. It's
That's right.
a fundamental thing right now.
It sounds very counterintuitive though. Even when I first saw it, that's when I came across it in the first place, my mother brought it to me, and as often happens, I was expecting to debunk this as as kind of a scientific background. I spent a lot of time in the medical literature going through things, and from health, diet, training. It's something where I wanted to come in and say, hey, don't spend your money on this. But what I found was that there's actually over 7,000 medical studies, randomized controlled trials. There's a huge body of literature behind this that our team actually contribute to now. There's an international group that contribute to these studies, cataloging them, and then really cataloging what's working out of the light therapy, because that's where we're still working on this from a medical research standpoint, is what characteristics of light are actually providing these photoreceptors in the body the correct level of dosing. And so we spend tens of thousands of hours with our team going through this, modeling how light distributes through tissue with really complex mathematical models. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, so do you have any case studies or use cases where you could say okay, let's just talk about my sprained ankle, because I'm obsessed with it. How long would it take? And I know that's hard to say, right?
Yes.
But every day I put this on for 15 minutes as directed in the instructions, which I read. But how long does something like this take to work? Because some people think, maybe it's an instant cure, but it's
not an instant cure typically, and we try to be conservative about this. So the numbers I'm going to tell you are going to be a little bit conservative, but with ankles and knees and hips and shoulders, we see relatively fast, depending on the level of traumatic tissue damage you have, we see relatively fast days to weeks long results in outcomes. And so I would say 2 to 4 weeks for those range of joints. And that's for inflammation. What happens is the inflammation reduces relatively quickly. The blood flow increases relatively quickly, but soft tissue changes. So increased production of the fast-growing front end cells of cartilage and called chondroblasts. It's a little bit longer. So that does take longer for you to remodel the soft tissue. But from a pain reduction, and inflammation reduction is very fast. Pain reduction is kind of a secondary outcome, and then the soft tissue remodeling is over months.
So people shouldn't expect instant results. I mean, it's not taking a drug. It's working, and it's increasing blood flow to an area, and it's a process. It's not, I'm saying this to you, but I'm also telling it to myself.
100%. But one of the good things is when you think about the other alternatives for improving pain outcomes right now. So if you look at opioids, really high level of addiction. So we see a lot of people coming out of opioids by using these devices for lower back pain.
Right, because chronic back pain is
just
a beast.
Terrible.
Yeah.
It's just awful. And you see not just the actual individual users and patients suffering from this, but their families and the people around them as well, because of the pain really can kind of mask who they are from a wellness standpoint, from a mental wellness standpoint. They become almost other people, and we end up getting these amazing testimonials back from them and their families around these kind of chronic pain changes. But when you look at what's happening, the commitment for being able to take the weeks to months that it takes to improve that tissue and reduce that inflammation and actually treat the underlying mechanisms for this. We make the analogy of a lot of times when you're looking at the short-term benefits of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs or opioids, it's like removing the batteries from the fire alarm. The fire's still burning in the kitchen. Your body is trying to tell you a signal that there's something wrong, and you're not putting out the fire. You're just taking the batteries out of the fire alarm. And what we'd like to be able to see people have is a more comprehensive approach where they can get back into healthier movement, get back into rehab with their medical professionals, but not be in such pain that they can't continue on and maintain those programs that actually help them with treating the underlying mechanisms and putting out that fire in the kitchen.
That's such a great analogy. I love that. And I do think, there's so many like negative side effects, obviously, of opioids, but also of taking anti-inflammatories or putting Voltaren on. It affects your liver, it affects your gut. And so this is just something that, as much as it's a light, it really works, and there's no negative side effects for it. So
yeah, it's really undereducated, I think, there's less education out there for people on the impacts of the NSAIDs these days.
Yeah.
One of the things, we met with one of the key researchers in the NSAID space who had spent 30 years doing this. And one of the things that she came out with was, from a data standpoint, was the 50% increase in severe cardiovascular disease when you're taking when you're chronically, like months at a time, taking these NSAIDs. The cardiovascular endothelial tissue has a massive negative impact from this, and it's almost the opposite with the laser therapy. You're actually releasing nitric oxide that does help you repair and provides additional elasticity to your cardiovascular endothelial tissue.
So this device, I've been putting it on my ankle, but it's one device that you're making, and you can use it on your back or anywhere on your body. You can just expand the bands. We can take it out of the box, but or I can just show a picture in the video. But it's one device, and you can use it anywhere on your body, basically.
That's exactly right. And there's actually a number of new types of protocols that we're working with research laboratories around the world on testing right now. There's a great new protocol called the proximal priority therapy that's been developed by a Japanese lab that we work with. That essentially is treating the larger blood vessels in your neck and treating your gut every day. And these are two areas where you can, with the blood vessels in your neck, we interact with hemoglobin very effectively for reducing the affinity for binding nitric oxide to these binding sites on hemoglobin. And so by releasing that nitric oxide into your blood, there's some really powerful downstream impacts. And there's some dietary things you can do to kind of supplement that. But you can also treat your gut. And the two things that we're seeing out of this from a longer term, if you don't have an existing pain point like your ankle, you can use this from a gut repair. So healing your gut, reducing kind of gaps between your tight junctions in your gut means that you're not going to have as much
leaky gut.
That's right, repairing the leaky gut and just keeping inflammation from going systemically. So. And inflammation, that chronic inflammation is one of the things that we're seeing driving a lot of early onset arthritis and a lot of other cardiovascular issues as well.
So where would you put it for your gut?
Just on the lower gut, and then I do this every morning right now. We've been doing a kind of internal test. We test beta testing internally before we roll things out from a protocol standpoint for our users, and it's amazing. The impacts from an autoimmune standpoint are just fantastic. And there's some very good research on this for even really powerful pathologies, really heavy pathologies like multiple sclerosis and asthma are seeing powerful autoimmune impacts
from red light therapy.
Gut. That's right.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so amazing. And so this has been around for ages.
Yes.
So is there a difference of the, I don't know, is it wattage or megahertz, or I don't know what it's called, I should be looking at my iPad right now, but is there a difference from like the clinical grade that you would get when you go to like a hospital, or maybe not a hospital because that's too Western, but like maybe your physical therapist or a wellness center that's doing this at a higher level versus the one that you're manufacturing?
We are limited to we're using class 1 lasers because, again, for us, it's important to be able to have people buy this over the counter and be able to use it at home. But one of the things that we found from the modeling we've done in this space, and that's been validated by a number of the different laboratories that we work with around this, is that you don't need, and if you do use what are kind of referred to as class 3 and class 4 lasers, those are much more heavily regulated, which is why we steered away from it. But we can also sell class 2 lasers over the counter, and the reason we've gone with class 1 instead of class 2 is that the outcomes, it's actually better. You're looking at so it's a combination of a few different characteristics of the light. So it's the power levels, the duty cycle, the frequency, and the wavelengths. And these kind of all come together. And again, I mentioned earlier that we're doing a lot of mathematical modeling around these. we build what are called Monte Carlo models to demonstrate how different light levels and different emitters distribute light or distribute photons through the tissue. And one of the things that we approach a little bit differently than most of the device manufacturers in this space is, instead of looking at what we're putting out of the device, so irradiance or power density, which are kind of what we think of as engineering specs for the devices, we've started from what's happening in the physiology. So we go in and say, with our mathematical models of what this tissue is, there's kind of skin tissue, there's adipose tissue, there's a number of different tissue layers that we build into these models. But we know what photoacceptors we're interacting with and how to interact with them most effectively, and then at what level they exist in this tissue depth. And building around that, we say, okay, how do we map backwards to what we need to deliver from a photon delivery standpoint from the device? And
so class 1 is perfect for humans.
That's right.
And what we need to do.
Our original design for this device was actually a class 2 device, where we had, right now have on each module, it's a modular device. There's 3 modules that you can clip into straps that then apply to your body. On each module, we now have 10 lasers. Originally, there were 2 lasers with the same level of power coming out.
Right.
And so that would have been the same power density and same irradiance levels. And so as a test for this early into the development phase, we did a test with a beta group on which is going to perform better. And there really shouldn't have been any major differences.
Right.
But there were. And the more spread out, using 10 lasers to provide the same level of dosing, had much more, had orders of magnitude more significant and substantial outcome impacts for reducing inflammation and pain. And so that led us to come back and rethink how we were actually going about the product design and the dosing models that we were using at the time. And so we've kind of scrubbed everything and built it kind of mathematically and from a physics standpoint, ground up an entirely new model for this.
So just when people are shopping around for these kind of devices, like, they should think about the laser, the class 1 laser. Obviously, they should just buy the Kineon device. But, they should if they aren't, for some reason, they should make sure that they do the research about what kind of laser, how many lasers, what kind of, all those things.
That's right. And we are actually going to be publishing our models for comparing how different devices provide from suboptimal all the way through to fully optimal delivery of dosage on our site in the coming year. It's just a lot of data to get up there.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so, a lot of people have heard of infrared therapy. So where is red light therapy on that spectrum of different light therapies?
So the 2 most widely researched or widely validated from the research community wavelengths for this are deep red, 650, 660 nanometer. And then 808 nanometer, so 808, 810 at the low end of the 800 nanometer range. 650 is deep red, 808 is infrared. And so this infrared you can't see. It's kind of invisible to the naked eye. What we're seeing now is that there's additional research going into this space, and we have another product coming out later this year for gut health specifically that will actually be including 3 different wavelengths of infrared, so 808, 940, and 1064. Based on the most recent research in this space. And we still include the red, because the red actually doesn't penetrate through to the deeper tissue for inflammation reduction as much as the infrared, but it does bring additional blood flow to the area, because you have a lot of kind of microvasculature at the more...
Like fascia.
That's right, that's right.
That is surrounding everything, so you need, the light goes through. And especially, for my listeners, right, I have a lot of athlete listeners.
Yes.
If you have plantar fasciitis, this is amazing for that.
It's one of those things where really, on a daily basis, people are like, I thought this was BS. I thought you guys were snake oil. This is amazing. How is this possible? And we actually, we built out a 30-day program for people to test this, because, it's counterintuitive. I myself, again, when I started my research on this, my initial intuition was that there's no way this is working at the rate that they're claiming. And really it's dosage based, but it does work.
But I'm a believer. So, you don't need to convince me. I've been putting it on, I've had it for a little bit, and I started using it. I'm really bad sometimes about using, taking my supplements or doing anything really that, I have it now on my desk though, and every day I'm just sitting at my desk, I put it on my ankle, 15 minutes and hopefully, you know, in a few weeks I'll be feeling better because my ankle is sprained in a place that like the only real solution is like PRP.
Yes.
Like
yes.
that is the solution.
Yes.
And I feel like this is kind of PRP light.
Yes. It also, so two other things that are,
Yeah.
are kind of supplemental for that from a therapeutic standpoint. You can do PRP and stem cells with the lasers, and it actually, they're synergistic. So it reacts really, really well with this. We've seen a lot of people, so with the plantar fasciitis is a great example. We treat overuse injuries extremely effectively. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that improves that is if we have more of the correct type of tissue in the area, which the PRP helps with, we can actually increase the dosing level. So you can leave it on for 30 minutes, 45 minutes instead of just 15, and it doses more effectively. It's one of the reasons, for example, why we treat arthritis in the hands very slowly because there's just not enough tissue there to interact with. So that's one of the ones where we try to set reasonable expectations and under promise and over deliver.
Yeah.
And you know, we have a lot of people who are like, hey, I'm using my hands. I haven't seen any pain reduction. And that's typically a 2-month process because there's just not as much tissue there for us to interact with. But with things like ankles and knees with PRP and the laser therapy together, it's amazing. You can go through. I think we had, we've had U.S. Olympic weightlifting team, professional crossfitters, people who do a lot of these repetitive kind of movements, particularly from a weightlifting, a very heavy loaded version of that. Or people who are with plantar fasciitis who are increasing their distances. They're going, I'm going to go run my first marathon, and so I'm starting to ramp up the amount of load that I'm putting on my peripheral joints. You see a lot of these overuse injuries, and this is an amazing use case for the laser therapy.
And so when did you start the company?
We started the company about 3 years ago, and we started delivering product just over 2 years ago.
Okay. And have you had any what are some of the challenges you've had along the way and maybe some opportunities you've had along the way, just from the business perspective?
It's been amazing. It's been really kind of humbling to be able to kind of interact with a lot of the professional athletes that we've one of the things that we decided early with the company, which was both an opportunity and a bit of a risk at the time, but has ended up working out quite well for us, is our mission is to improve the quality of life for the largest number of people we can. And so when we see people have, particularly with professional athletes, they have injuries, we'll send them a device. And we're a startup, and we've been bootstrapped to date. And so we don't really have a huge budget to go out and engage big athletes, but we just send people a device and say, hey, this is our mission, is to help people recover from an ACL injury or an Achilles tear or a slap tear in the shoulder or something like this. And when they have a great experience with it, they've been like really excited and become kind of flag waving ambassadors for us. And relative to the size of the company, that's just been kind of awesome to interact with people that you only kind of looked up to from their professional kind of career, NFL, NBA, Olympic lifters. Like this kind of thing has just been super exciting. CrossFitters, et cetera.
Yeah. So what's your background in terms of business and athletics? This is not obviously your first business. So what were you doing before Kineon?
My last business was an LED lighting and controls business. I mentioned I spent...
LED lighting? Oh my gosh.
Yes.
We need some lighting help over here.
It was a very exciting thing at the time. We started the business early and before LEDs were really broadly adopted for general lighting.
Right.
And our goal with that company was to make an impact and reduce the total load of electricity and power that the world needed, because there's a lot of energy that's generated, coal and oil in really kind of inefficient ways. And if we can reduce that load, then by having more efficient, by taking advantage of the new technologies to have more efficient lighting, then we can make a meaningful impact on kind of the environmental outcome for the world. And it was great. We actually sold it to the second largest lighting company in the world and spent some great time in that space. But I built manufacturing, kind of technology, innovative manufacturing and engineering teams in China. I was there for almost 20 years and my last two businesses that I ran there, and I speak and read and write fluent Chinese, so I ran those businesses in Chinese, and I ended up leaving China with the advent of COVID and moved out. But it was very good. It was synergistic with the building of Kineon.
So what did you love about living in China? I've never been there.
Oh, it's awesome. So there's things that take a little bit of time to get adjusted to. The cities are much, particularly on the eastern seaboard, are much more high population density. And there's downsides to that, and then there's conveniences and upsides to that.
Right.
But it's I really just loved kind of the environment, the high-paced environment, the supportive infrastructure for building new businesses and being able to build something that could change the world. And you know, I was in China from the late 90s or late 90s actually. And that's one of the times in history that we've seen the fastest growth in any country or any civilization ever, taking 600-700 million people from being destitute to being middle class, which is a really crazy thing to see.
That's incredible. That's amazing. And so what led you to China? Was it work or?
I studied Chinese in school. I did international baccalaureate program when I was in high school, and I loved Chinese, and I had a great professor for Chinese in school, and they got us into a really cool program with Nanjing University. When I was still in high school, there was a university program there.
And you're from Atlanta, right? That's
great.
Yeah.
And so we went and spent some semesters in China, learning more Chinese, and it was such a deep and robust and unusual or unknown history and language that was really just kind of a puzzle, and I loved it. So I moved back there as soon as I could, and, ended up starting my first businesses there, and ran my startups in China for the next 18 years or so.
Wow. Yeah. Have you lived all around China? Like, have you lived in certain places? Like,
so I lived in Zhejiang province. I arrived in Nanjing, which is in Jiangsu province, kind of in central east China. I spent most of my time in Zhejiang, in Hangzhou, which is near Shanghai. And then I last was in Guangzhou, which is in South China, which is the capital of Guangdong province or Canton province. It's a really interesting old city with a huge history to dive into, and it was just an amazing place to live and learn.
It sounds so amazing. So when did you get into sports and athletics? You mentioned that you have a High Rocks event coming up in Mexico. So what's your background in terms of sports and athletics? What fuels you for success in your day-to-day business?
So I love it. I've been around sports my entire life. My parents got me into sports from, I guess, about the age of 4. We were playing baseball, football, soccer, basketball, basically a sport year-round. And I think one of the as a parent now, in retrospect, one of the things that we're doing was kind of managing high-energy boys, which is
How many?
Just my brother and myself.
Oh, okay.
But we got into sports because of that, and it was great because you take a lot of lifelong lessons out of that, and one of the ones that's really stuck with me until now is discipline. And I really kind of love that. The up until probably the last year or so, I was training the last 5 years, which started with my rugby team in Guangzhou. I was playing for the city level. I started rugby, which is probably the wrong time of life to start it, at 38 for the city level team in Guangzhou, the Guangzhou Rams. And it's a great way to build community and to build kind of a group of friends around in a new city. And it was amazing for that. But it's also great from a discipline standpoint. It gives you a reason to stay in shape. And so that also got me into training CrossFit. And from CrossFit, we've gone into start training High Rocks. And I think the journey is still ongoing. But the main thing is finding something that you're comfortable with. I've got 2 young boys, and they're in this now, and they do training with us daily as well. Same kind of thing.
Like all the CrossFit High Rock stuff? Or?
Yes.
Oh, that's so cute. Yeah.
The older one, they're 8 and 5, so the older one's actually able to do the assault and echo bikes. And poor guy, he hasn't figured out that it's it's just terrible training to do. But once you get used to it, and I think this is one good thing about having the young guys used to it, like the kids, is once you get used to that, the discipline's kind of inbuilt. You just have that ingrained in yourself ongoing, and it's the journey is ever expanding. It's involving meditation and breath work.
Do you do that as well? You do all the meditation.
Yes.
So you do. What are your wellness habits? Your meditation and.
Meditation, I do breath meditation once and sometimes twice a day with the family.
The whole family does it? That's amazing.
Yeah,
what kind of meditation?
With meditation, I like Tara Brach. She's a guided meditation. She came from kind of the psychiatry background from a clinical standpoint, but she also is a guided meditation expert, and does free podcasts with it. Just does amazing versions of this. And for the breath work that we do with it, we use Othership. And a shout out for.
I love Othership.
Oh, it's awesome.
Are you going to visit while you're in New York?
If I have time, yes. I would love. I have two of our team with us. I would love to drag them in with me.
Oh my God, I love it. I mean, it's so funny because I went there. I've been there a few times, but I went to the opening. There was like an opening night, and it was so great. You know, I love being in the sauna, and the cold plunge I'm kind of like getting into, but I'm not that into it. But I do love the sauna. I love heat.
Yes.
And so then I went back for like some event, and everyone, I felt like everyone was 25. I felt like I went to like a parallel universe where I was in a dating app, but in real life in a sauna. Like everyone, I mean, I was in like a swimming bathing suit. Like I wasn't even like wearing a bikini. Like I definitely was not. I went back and it was hysterical. And I mean, I appreciated it and I thought it was great. I was like, oh wow, all these people, it's like Daybreaker, but like you can go whenever you want.
Yes, yes.
It's a big nightclub party with saunas,
right.
And I'm sure there's some dating component to it.
Yes, yes.
if that's what you're into.
Yeah, for sure. And to, you know, from my perspective though, we've only used the app. They have a They have a very good app for breathwork. So I haven't been into the actual spaces, but I have had amazing kind of testimonials from people, and so we are actually looking into that.
Oh, you have to go.
I can't wait. I'm really like it's my kind of space. We have at my house an ice barrel and a sauna and all of this, and so we're really kind of an entire meditation area and all of that. So
I love it.
It's my kind of space. I love that, and obviously we're in kind of the recovery space as well. So it's we can kind of work in a bit of work while we're there too. But I think it's something that the more you can commit into over time, and the easier and more convenient you can make it, the better. So.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get in and check these out. And their app is amazing. Their breathwork app is.
I've never seen I haven't dialed into their app. So their app is breathwork.
The app is breathwork. It's with the Othership app. This is one of the things that's kind of, I don't want to say off-putting, but it's not my aesthetic. Is the music on the app, and I think that's kind of in line with
what we're talking about.
But the actual physiological breathwork piece of it is unbelievably powerful. And again, it's one of those things that you find they do it with things like a gratitude practice and with there's a number of other there's kind of up versions and down regulation versions, but I've actually taken on the gratitude practice daily and try to get my kids in for that once a day.
That's a really good habit.
It's so powerful. It's been amazing, the outcomes, just on a mood and on a relationship standpoint, and how much we communicate has changed around it. So, shout out to
do that. Yeah.
Shout out to Thomas DeLauer, who actually put me on that one in the first place. I was out training with him in LA, and he was like, try this out, and it's amazing. So it's try the app out.
That's amazing. We expect for the future in Kineon. I know we talked a little bit about it, weaved into our conversation, but.
No, it's a great question, and there's kind of a short and longer version of that. But the short version is we have two products that are launching on Indiegogo right now as a crowdfunding effort. And those are going amazingly. It's such exciting products. So a gut product that helps people with some of the things we were talking about earlier, like leaky gut, like irritable bowel syndrome, really anything that's inflammation mediated in the gut. We can see a powerful impact on that inflammation reduction. And again, there's just not great tools for this right now that are out there. And so the secondary piece for the gut is that your gut is your second brain, and so we see increased serotonin, we see increased dopamine, the mood and affect is what they call it in the medical literature is just powerfully impacted. And so you can use our current device for that right now. I do. Our new device is actually going to be more optimally dosed for that with 3 different wavelengths of infrared that actually penetrate better to the gut area and treat that tissue in a more effective way.
Because infrared can go deeper than red. Got it.
And there's just more and more research on this, and so it's one of those things where we have to model on what's there from a research standpoint, and then also design around what's been modeled. And so we've built this powerful mathematical model for how light and photons distribute through tissue and how they optimally deliver into these photoacceptors. And so now we're leveraging that to be able to treat other tissue in the body outside of this soft tissue, like we were talking about earlier with kind of, the fascia, the ligaments, the cartilage. Now we're looking at treating this internal tissue that's a little bit further in. But that's one of the products that's launching now. And then one of the things that came up as we were testing our early devices for treating gut was that about roughly 15% of the people we were treating weren't really seeing these physiological impacts that we were anticipating, and particularly from the brain, because we were doing blood work for testing the brain. And what we found was that people who were in fight or flight kind of autonomic state, and there's a balance there, and you do need to be able to have that fight or flight available. But what you find is when people are in this state, when they're not running away from the tiger, when they're they're just in that state chronically.
Right, like their cortisol levels are super high.
Yes, they don't recover well, they don't sleep well, they have ruminative thoughts. Their time to sleep is one of the things that we measure effectively for this, is very long. And when they are asleep, they're getting less effective sleep as well. And so one of the ways that we can treat that is by stimulating the vagus nerve with electricity. So transcutaneous electrical stimulation for the vagus nerve. It's awesome. It's so powerful. And there's a couple of devices on the market that actually treat this. But one of the things that we noticed about these was that
because isn't breath work really the only thing that you can do for the vagus nerve?
Yes.
Oh, that I know of. Yeah.
Yes, breath work definitely helps. And there's some other things you can do to trigger this from a more holistic approach. And I would like to take that opportunity to say that with all the devices we're making, these are science and data based, but they're not a one-shot thing. We still say take a more comprehensive approach with your gut.
100%.
Treat your gut, but also change your diet. Get more movement. There's a
Yeah, I mean it's like an athlete. Like you can work out all you want, but if you don't eat healthy, you're not healthy.
That's right. That's exactly.
That's the bottom line.
That's right. You can't outrun your diet.
Yeah, totally.
But with this one of the things that we were seeing is that when people were in this fight or flight state, the gut treatment wasn't making the brain chemistry change in the way that we were anticipating. And what we're able to do with this vagus nerve stimulation is stimulate the vagus nerve in a way that takes you out of that fight or flight state. And what we did is, with our technology, we went one step beyond that and said, we want to measure where you are, because that's part of our mission, is not just kind of treating, but just where do you start from baseline, and then where do we move you in a positive direction? And so we're implementing EEG sensors for your vagus nerve so that we can dose you on a personalized basis. So when you're being stimulated, that stimulator is responding to your physiology to optimally dose you to move the needle from a recovery standpoint, and to help you kind of get out of that fight or flight state and get into an optimal autonomic state. So it's a lot to say.
So when is that coming out, and what does it look like?
So the gut product, the laser product for the gut, we're going to start delivering December and January.
Okay.
That'll be before Chinese New Year. And then our vagus nerve, our EEG-enabled vagus nerve device, the Calm Plus, will be delivered March, April.
Okay.
And so those are coming very soon.
Yeah.
Our team are hard at work in the kitchen on baking those up as we speak with our supply chain. And we do a lot of testing on those early. So like I mentioned with the Move Plus, we have them out with beta users trying to find intuitive leaps that are going to improve the user experience for it. And again, with our mission being so heavily focused on a measurable difference in quality of life, we really focus our early testing around that, and it makes a big difference for our products by the time they get to market. So, and then the last one that's also very exciting is a brain product. We're bringing out the brain is just such a powerful, high leverage point from a human experience standpoint that we really feel like there's that transcranial photobiomodulation has been a proven therapy for a number of different pathologies, behavioral pathologies like depression and anxiety, pain pathologies like
huge.
Fibromyalgia. We have a fibromyalgia study going on with the UK hospital, and it's been amazing, the results.
Wow, that's incredible.
But yes, we're also going to measure that. So we're going to put a spectroscopy device embedded in this, so you can see how your brain uses energy. So kind of the metabolic function or impairment. and then the cerebral blood flow. And that gives us a very strong way to interpret what type of pathologies you might have, whether that's anxiety or depression or early onset Alzheimer's or different types of dementia or fibromyalgia. They all present in different ways relative to how your brain uses energy and how blood flow operates in your brain as well.
So will that also work with nerve issues?
Yes, the impact on the neurological tissue is very powerful. That plus the vagus stimulation, it's a really powerful combination. So being able to use light to treat the brain, but not only that, also to take a map of what how your brain is performing before. So like what's your baseline?
Yeah.
And then during treatment, and then short-term, middle-term, long-term treatment, why should I stay in using this treatment? Or why should I change my behavior? We've seen some really powerful modalities for, I know you have the, what looks like a Whoop strap here. Yes.
Yeah.
Whoop, Aura. These guys have done a great job of using plethysmography, which is an older technology, and interpreting it in a way that makes your behavior something that you can modify and see differences in from a data standpoint on a daily basis. What we're going to be doing is using kind of newer hardware. So using spectroscopy and functional spectroscopy to build more robust pictures directly from your physiology. Plethysmography is something that has been used to be able to measure really strong signals in your body, like heart rate.
And HRV.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, heart rate and then heart rate derivatives like HRV. And then and HRV is a good recovery, is a little hand wavy, it's a little bit indirect, but it's a good recovery metric in general. And building out with machine learning and really broad longitudinal data, ways that people can change their behavior and expect the outcomes to change relative from their recovery and from their strain and from their stress. It's a really powerful model. And what we'd like to be able to do for the brain is do something like that, but with a more powerful data capture of how your body, not just from a heart rate and heart rate variability standpoint is performing, but how it's performing from a metabolic standpoint.
Right. And so that will be delivered for consumers, not, it's not a clinical product. It's not. That's amazing. That's really cool.
It's so exciting,
I mean,
but it's so hard.
I know, I'm sure. I'm a huge advocate of, the more you know about what's going on in your body, the better your longevity and your life will be while you're here. I'm not saying that you have to live forever, but while you're here, you might as well live well.
That's right. And the more you can kind of understand about that, the more you're enabled to thrive.
Right.
Like not just get, that's one of the things we're seeing with the Move Plus as well is when you get people out of pain, they get back into a state where they can actually go move toward thriving. And it's just such a good kind of pivot point for people. And this data is going to be the same thing is when you can look at what's happening from a brain standpoint metabolically, there's so many downstream impacts for that. And you can modulate those from diet, you can modulate those from exercise, and you can modulate those from stopping alcohol. There's so many different things that you can track relative to this that are outside of necessarily like a laser kind of transcranial laser therapy, but having that additional tool in your kit or in your toolbox is really helpful.
So I feel like this is something that every athlete should have, right? As part of their toolkit for recovery. Like if they have Normatec boots or they have any of those kind of things, my whole toolbox is like infrared therapy, red light therapy with Kineon. I've got hyper-race boots and compression boots and all those things. And I think there's hundreds of thousands of athletes out there. Who's your audience right now?
So oddly enough, we have three primary audience groups. One is, as I mentioned, kind of young performance-based athletes. And typically athletes who are doing really heavy kind of training, so that are seeing some level of downward impact or negative impact from overtraining. Then you see kind of middle-aged guys like me who are like, I want to continue playing rugby. I'm 45. I want to play till I'm 60. Like let me go keep doing CrossFit at a high level or high rocks at a high level. Let me continue let me find a way to treat my soft tissue, which would be a limiting factor for me otherwise, in a way that's going to allow me to keep playing. And then, essentially what I think of as our last cohort is more or less like my parents who are in their 70s, who may have more chronic pain and chronic inflammation, and for whom this is more of a lifestyle product where they can go, we see people go from being unable to walk a couple hundred meters to being able to walk miles to being able to get back into light jogging over months. And that's the kind of like, that's the third group is the
that sounds like
older
the
group.
sweet spot for this though.
Yes.
Because
It's been so
they're
powerful.
like, they're gonna like spend the money, invest in the product.
Yes, it's oddly enough though, they've been the hardest ones to engage on.
convince, yeah.
But one of the things that we found that has been a good way into this is we've started a medical professional reseller network. What happened was we had a number of different people coming in from I'm an orthopedic surgeon, or I'm a chiropractor, or I'm a PT. I'm also a triathlete, or I'm a CrossFitter.
Right.
I use your device. It was great. Now I'm putting it in my clinic. How can we work together? And so we may not be the sharpest tools in the shed. It took us 100 or 200 people coming in to say that. But over time, we developed out a group for testing with this, and it's been accelerating over the last 6 months. And I think we're going to see this explode next year, where people put this into the clinic, and those.
That's a huge channel for you.
Oh, it's so great because those older guys who don't respond well to kind of social media marketing, they're like, oh, this is snake oil, or all the comments.
Everyone says that.
It's crazy, but when they get a chance to use it and they can see the results, they buy two, and they're giving them away to people, and they become.
I was just going to say these are great holiday gifts. Like I already have, this is like I already have people in mind that would benefit from this. But also, like I think it's important to manage people's expectations with this type of stuff because, again, and I'm like the queen of impatience, but I do all these things so I know they work. But it's not like a magic pill.
That's right.
Like you need to like give it time and follow the directions.
Yes.
But I do believe those older generation are harder to convince. But like once they get in on it, they can be your biggest salespeople.
Yes, and they are. And we see these little like geographic explosions because they just tell all of their friends. They're like, this actually. With the older users, it's been amazing for this. And one of the things I would say is that it is something that requires a little bit longer. So it's weeks. It's kind of a week scale outcome. So what we try to coach people into is build habits with it.
Right.
So if you are, and it doesn't, there's people think about habits as, oh, let me do this while I meditate. And you say, well, have you meditated, much in the past couple of weeks? Oh, one time. Don't do it with that. Do it with something that you actually do every day. It doesn't matter if that's Netflix. It doesn't matter if that's coffee in the morning.
That's my jam. I'm sitting at my desk and I'm putting it on my ankle. 15 minutes in the morning. I'm sitting there anyway. What else am I doing?
That's exactly it. Or on your drive into work. That's one of the reasons why we've tried to make it as wearable and as functional as we can to do with other things at the same time, is so that people don't lose their habits on this.
I also think a huge audience for you are, a lot of my listeners are athletes, right? We're runners, we're triathletes, cyclists. I mean, I've got the huge longevity component. I know that I've got my mom and her friends and other people I don't know that are of that age and demographic that are listening, but also there's like a huge core athlete component. And I feel like this is like such a game changer for every athlete to have one in their house because we're always getting injured.
Yes, it's always
there's always something
here and ankle sprains there and the shoulder.
And especially plantar fasciitis.
Oh my goodness, yes.
That's a nightmare. So and I know that every runner doing a marathon at some point something's going to hurt.
Yes. And especially as you kind of ramp up and ramp down on the volume, and we see that the same thing. It's that when you have repetitive stress on any joints, they just don't like it. The soft tissue doesn't like it very much, and especially when you start increasing that, it's really kind of it's like a cheat code.
Yeah, ask you about your audience because I feel like this is like, I feel like this is such a no-brainer for athletes and anyone in the older generation. Even actually, it's just a no-brainer for everyone to add to their sort of recovery toolkit and just to have at home. I'm excited for it to help my ankle. And I definitely think, as we get into the holiday season, this is a great holiday gift.
Oh, yes.
The gift of healing.
Yes, it's so helpful for these things like sprained ankles and soft tissue issues like this. One thing that I was going to mention to you earlier about the ankle as well is that if you have blood flow restriction cuffs, it's one thing that we're seeing really strong, effective use in synergy with this. And it's very similar to the PRP that I mentioned earlier. What you're doing is you're just aggregating the right kind of tissue there for us to interact with, and so you can use your device for longer and have more meaningful interactions from a tissue standpoint, and so you just heal faster. And so we've had people use this for knees and ankles extremely effectively.
All right, I'm going to dial into that. But Forrest, it was so awesome to connect with you today and to learn all about Kineon and the exciting products and things that you have coming in the pipeline.
Likewise, I really appreciate the discussion. This has been so amazing connecting with you, and I can't wait to hear what your audience thinks as well. If there's any kind of feedback that we can help support,
Yeah,
I'd
totally.
love to.